In this lesson, we're going to look at compound interest, look at it a little bit more in detail, and try to vary some of the questions so that it's not quite as straightforward as the first ones you've seen. We can use this formula whenever you're doing compound interest. No problem using that, but I think we're going to spend most of our time using the TVM solver because it's pretty handy for these kinds of questions. If you were going to use the compound interest formula, and you weren't just finding for A, so for example, in this question, we're going to be finding for future value. You could just plug it in exactly like it is, but if you were finding one of these other variables, let's say you're finding P, you may have to use some algebra to do that. Okay, some of the properties of algebra. But let's look at this first example and see if we can use the TVM solver. So it says Ginny's 18 years old. She's inherited some money from a relative. She wants to invest some of the money. So we're not investing all of her money, so that she can buy a home in Alberta when she turns 30. Okay, so there's our first bit of information. She's going from 18 to 30. So that means it's going to be 12 years. Okay, let's keep that in mind. She estimates that she will need $170,000. So that's what she wants to end up with. That is your future value. Okay, how much does she have to invest now at 6.5%? So 6.5% we can put here, compounded annually. So compounded annually. Well, she's not going to make payments here. So then we put one payment per year. This one means that we're going to reinvest the money every year. Okay, so then if we're doing this for 12 years and we're making one payment a year, it's 12 times 1. The question is, what is our present value? So let's put that in the calculator. Oh, by the way, this should be end, and it almost always is end. Okay, if we put this, we're going to get negative 79,846.0852. Now you can't put that as your answer. You have to know, what does that answer mean? That means that she had to invest this much money is the amount needed to invest. So make sure that all of these questions, and that you're going to get used to this eventually, all of these questions you kind of have to answer the question at the end. So you're going to do a bunch of work to figure something out, but there always has to be a final answer. What have you found by doing that work? Okay? So it'll take us a little while to get used to doing that, but we'll get there. What is the ratio of future value to present value? Okay. To find the ratio of future value, so this is future value, and this is present value. A ratio is a proportion. So we want to end up with 170,000, and we put in 79,846. The ratio is 2.13. Okay, so in other words, the investment has more than doubled. Okay, let's try part C. How would the ratio change if the interest rate was decreased to 6% but was compounded semi-annually? So in other words, they're saying, well, would I have to put more or less money in? So some things will change, will stay the same. It's still going to be 12 times 1. We're still going to make one payment a year. But this time the interest is 6% and it's compounded twice a year. Okay, so what would I need to end up with $170,000? Well, if we put this into the calculator, and by the way, you should always be trying this to make sure you understand where these numbers are coming from, you get this. Okay, which means I would have had to invest this money, $83,000, which is a bit more. Okay, and so how would the ratio change? Well, let's look at the ratio. So the number in the denominator is a little bigger. That means our ratio is going to get a little smaller. It turns out to be still doubled, but not by quite as much. Okay. Example 2. Agnes and Bill are musicians. They have researched the costs to set up a small recording studio. They estimate that $40,000 will pay for the soundproofing, recording equipment, and computer hardware and software that they need. They plan to set up a studio in 3 years and have invested money at 9.6% compounded quarterly to save for it. Wow, that's a lot. A lot of information. How much money should they have invested? So we're going to be looking for how much do we start with? Well, we want to end up with $40,000. What else do we know? We know that the interest rate is 9.6, and we're supposed to do this in 3 years. And we're not making any payments, so it's just one payment per year. But it says that the interest rate is compounded quarterly, 4 times a year. Okay, so let's solve this. Alpha equals, turns out that you have a need for $30,000, $30,092.66. So we'll say should be invested. Okay. How much interest will they earn over the return? Okay, well, there's a couple of ways we could do this. We could take the final value, subtract the future value, subtract the present value, and this is a totally okay way to do it. You end up with $9,907.33. But there is another way to do it. I do want to show this to you because it helps you do some of the other questions. Okay, so I'm going to grab my TVM solver. Let's go to Finance and TVM solver, and let's fill it out like we just had. So for you'll still have it on your calculator. Okay, I've got to plug these numbers in. Okay, so I went here and I'd go alpha, enter. So there's my answer. And what we want to do now is figure out how much interest was collected during that time. So while the information is on the calculator, it has to be there. This question has to be there. I'm going to go back to and leave all the numbers there. I'm going to go back to apps. I'm going to go to finance. But instead of going to TVM solver, I'm going to scroll down here a little bit. All right, and I see this one, this symbol. Okay, let's write it down. It's this. And what this means is the sum of the interest. In other words, how much interest have I paid? But what I have to do is I have to tell it, what are you talking about? What kind of interest are you talking about here? Okay, well, if you look back at our question, when we had the stuff in the TVM solver, we knew that n was 3. We had 3 years that this interest is being collected. So what I want to do is I want to tell interest from, whoops, I did something wrong there. Let me just back up a little bit. So let's put that back on there. I need to actually clear this screen. The information has to be there, but I need to clear the screen. I need to get out of here. Okay, so let's get out of there and then do that. Okay, so 1, let's go find. Okay, so now I need to go from 1 comma to 3. So from 1 year to 3 years, this will tell me how much interest I collected. So from 1 to 3, and what does it tell me? It says that I've collected $9,907.34. So it's a wee bit of a different answer, but not much. Okay, so let's make ourselves a couple little notes. How do you use this? You need to have information entered in the TVM solver. But then you need to clear your display. So we need to go back to a blank screen before you can enter this. Okay, so we're going to use that button a couple times yet through these lessons. Okay. Next question. Laura invested $15,500 in a registered education savings plan. For those of you that don't know what a registered education savings plan is, if you, as a parent, put in money into an RESP, the government actually matches up to 20% of the money. So for example, if you, let's say you wanted to save for your son or daughter's tuition at university. Let's say you wanted to put in $5,000 to save in the RESP. The government will give you 20% of that, which is $1,000. So your investment becomes $6,000 instead of $5,000. And that can be used to save for when you go to university or some other post-secondary institution to pay for tuition. Okay, so if you're thinking about that, you can actually do that yourself, for yourself as well. So you might want to think about that if you're thinking of investing some money towards your education. Okay, she wants her investment to grow to at least $50,000 by the time her newborn enters university in 18 years. Okay, so what interest rate, compounded annually, will result in a future value? So we're looking for the interest rate here. This is the one we don't know. So let's put in what we do know. Well, she invested $15,500. Notice I'm putting the negative because it's coming out of my pocket. I'm putting this into the bank. And I want to have come out $50,000. All right. Now it says it's going to be compounded annually, so this is 1. And I will be making no further payments. So this one is always connected. Now what is N? Well, she's going to be doing this for 18 years, making 1 payment per year. That 1 payment is just reinvesting the amount. Okay, so if I put this in my TVM solver, alpha solve, I end up with 6.72%. Okay, so what interest rate will result? 6.72% is needed. Okay. Next one. Suppose that Laura wants her $15,500 to grow to at least $60,000 at the interest rate from part A. So in other words, I'm going to leave it in there a little bit longer. Okay, how long will it take? So we're going to use 6.72, but we're not going to use 6.72 because if you look on the screen right now, whatever was here, let's leave it there. Don't round it off. So it was actually, you know, a much longer number. It just gives it a little bit more accuracy. Okay, so keep full decimal from the previous question. Okay, this is staying the same. Payment, we're not making any payments. The final value now is going to be 60,000 though. Okay, and this is still the same. And the question is, what is the time? How long will this take? Okay, what comes out? Alpha solve, so it's 20.802 years. So it would take 20.8 years for it to grow to 60,000. But there's a little bit of a problem. The interest is compounded annually, and this always happens at the end of the year. So it won't get to 60,000 until the end of this time. So that means we're actually going to have to say we need 21 years, because 20 years will not give us $60,000 yet. Okay, does that make sense why we had to round it up? It's not because it's a 0.8. It's because at the end of 20 years, you're not going to have 60,000 yet. But at the end of 21 years, you'll actually have a little bit more than 60,000, but then at least we've reached our answer. Okay, so keep that in mind, because it's compounded only per year. We have to round up to 21. All right. So some key ideas. Any form of the compound interest formula or the TVM solver may be used. We did the TVM solver. If you want to try some of those with the formula, no problem. You could do that. But the TVM solver is probably a little bit more useful. Okay. You might want to put a little highlight on this. Maybe this should go on your cheat sheet. If you want to compare investments as a ratio, we use that. Okay. We didn't use this part of the formula. We just used A over P because we had found both of those values. All right. Some homework for you. Let's do page 40. Numbers 5 to 7, 9 to 11. Okay, and remember, where do you find those? Those are in the My Site. Answers are also provided. Reminder to you, when you're doing your homework, you have to check your answers. You have to check your answers to see if you're getting them correct, so that you can ask about what's going wrong. If you're not checking your answers, you don't know if you're understanding or if you're doing things correctly. Okay?